topic. I'm in full agreement with Richard Dawkins. He says religion is the root of all evil. Sean says people have replaced traditional religion with new ones, things like sex and gender and race and politics. He says, but the trouble is they're all zealots, extremists, fundamentalists, and we are now going through the inquisition of work cancel culture, the torture and the public execution of those that blaspheme. Why are you laughing? I think
Well, I mean, he put it very well, but, I mean, you know, exemplified the whole issue very well, I think, absolutely.
But does it matter that fewer people are following, like, a religious kind of framework? Because I am not overly religious, I must confess, but I do think that religion gives a framework.
It does.
I think it's very important, particularly for family units sometimes, not always, I confess, but in terms of family life, I think religion can really help provide a framework there for people. And I think what's happening is those kind of the value sets, that commonality, that shared connection, that shared belief in something, that does seem to be kind of dissipating now. And then into that void becomes this kind of, I think a man can become a woman, and if you disagree with me, then off with your head, quite frankly, kind of thing. And I do think it might be problematic for that reason.
Well, I mean, I completely agree. I think there are cultural guidances, there are cultural benefits you get from religion, there are moral guidances, and you also are, I think, people who are religious have a kind of inner peace and self-confidence, which you lose if you completely give, you know, I'm not saying, sorry, I just rephrase that, you don't necessarily lose it, but you're at risk of losing that self-confidence if you don't have faith. You know, if you have faith, you have self-confidence because you believe in God. You instantly have that reassurance that faith gives you. And there is no shadow of a doubt in my mind that the state has interfered so much in our lives that it is now beginning even to occupy the space that used to be occupied by religion. And it comes back, you know, sorry to bring it back to this subject, but it comes back to the environmental, social and corporate governance guidelines that I was talking about, which is pervasive in business, and it's the corporate equivalent of what the government is trying to get us to do in our private lives. And woke is right part of that. The promotion of minorities to the detriment of the majority is part of that. And it's hijacked the whole system. And religion has moved out of the way and allowed it to do it. In fact, the Church of England is complicit in what's going on.
In what way?
Well, we have an Archbishop. I used to be shy of saying this, but I feel I need to say it. We have an Archbishop of Canterbury who doesn't believe in the United Kingdom, who holds our history in contempt, who thinks that we should somehow pay reparations for the slave trade, even though it was this country that abolished slavery, that it was this country that spent more money in the 19th century policing the world, trying to eliminate slavery, than it earned from slavery. That's a well-documented fact. And you know, we had the Dean of Trinity College Chapel the other day claiming that Jesus was probably transgender, and he had his congregation in tears. We've got an Archbishop of Canterbury who would promote these illegal crossings of the Channel, to the detriment, I would argue, James, of the British people. And so the Church is part of the problem.
He agrees with you.
The Church has become part of the problem. Religion, as it's been practiced through, you know, the Archbishop of Canterbury, I'm afraid has vacated the field.
I mean, I'm certainly not a spokesperson for the Church of England, but part of the teachings, as I understand it, of the Church is to do with charity, tolerance, and doing unto others as you'd have done unto yourself. All those things you mentioned seem to be in that basic framework. So you can disagree with it, but the idea that this is somehow the downfall of society, it's linked to the collapse of religion. What we do have is a lack of community and a lack of personal, spiritual development in our society.
Where's that lack of community come from? What's causing that?
Well, I think we've had a breakdown of lots of collective civic institutions in the last kind of 40, 45 years as the economy has changed. I think in large parts of the country where you would have had one or two major employers in a place, you would have had lots of people working together. That creates community. You would have pubs and institutions that people involved in. As our society has become more atomised, we have less community, and we're sitting at home posting angrily on our own rather than being part of something larger together. But there's also space for individual spiritual development and mysticism and so on. But all of these things should be based in an idea of a common humanity and a common kindness. And that there are some teachings
but most people
from
are
religion.
kind, James, whether it's religious people or not. Most people at their hearts are fundamentally
I agree with you.
good,
I'm not,
decent
and
people.
that's why I'm saying that, firstly, of course, I totally reject this idea that the minority is being put ahead of the majority or whatever.
Oh, it is.
But
it is. Come on, I've just given you one example.
I mean,
by
unless
the
you're
way.
talking about the people that own everything, whose interests set the agenda for society, then of course, then we can talk about the many and the few. But I mean, the few that run things are not the 0.% of the population that are trans or whatever that may be.
Right, well, there you go. Do you know what? That is a conversation. I think what I'm going to do one of these days, everybody, is I'm going to do shows maybe once a month or so on the big questions, because some of these issues, they really are kind of broad.